Good morning, everybody. It's a little past 8:30. We'll call this morning's meeting to order. Our first item is the approval of the agenda, and we do have one agenda addition, and that's a request to approve to fill a vacancy for the full-time accounting position, technician in social services.
Move to approve with addition.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Citizens to be heard. Do we have any citizens? We're seeing none. We'll move on. Approval of payment of bills and vouchers.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Approval of minutes from August 8th.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. We'll move into our 8:35 item, and that's a request to fill position for child protection services worker. Rhonda, good morning.
Right, good morning. Okay, we had another resignation in our child protection unit. This was one of when we had hired some additional staff for the last couple of years. This is an employee from that group. She's going to move into individual and family counseling, so it's a good move for her, but a loss for us, and so I'm requesting to replace her position. She did ongoing child protection case management and worked with kids in out-of-home placement, so it's a position we desperately need to keep in our roster.
Move to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. And this is income generating too, right? This
It
position.
does generate some income, yes. It doesn't generate enough income to
Okay.
pay for the position, but these are some of the positions we use those new state allocations for hiring staff. So we still do receive those funds.
Very good, thank you. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried.
Is that going to be filled within? Do you have to backfill or?
We typically don't get a lot of interest from our internal social workers to move into child protection. Typically, they're moving out of child protection. So I don't anticipate that. However, I would ask if, in fact, we do have internal movement, you would allow me to backfill those
That's fine
positions.
with me.
Does that meet with the motion in the second and the vote? Okay, all right, we're good. All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if we could, you did have an addendum.
Oh, sure, yeah, we
with,
can,
it's a,
we got Lori?
right, here she is. And it's a position in the auditor treasurer's, you said social services, but she works with social services, so I thought,
Okay.
I didn't know if Lori was going to make it up or not. I thought we
All
could
right.
handle it.
Lori,
right-
let's do
right
this
there.
agenda addition item, which is to fill a vacancy for the full-time accounting.
Yeah, I'm just, I got a resignation yesterday, so I'm just looking to replace it to social service account. It's in my office,
Okay,
but it's just a replacement position that's in the budget.
okay.
So-
Is there, would there need to be a reason to backfill that or have the potential, or is that not an issue?
I doubt it. but-
Yes, it's actually, we told one of her staff to move over into our child protection vacancy we had for our collections unit. So she's moving over to our child support, and then Lori's looking to fill that. So do you anticipate internal
I
movement for that?
doubt it. I guess I could ask for permission to backfill if necessary.
All right, let's,
Move to approve.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. That includes the backfill if necessary. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, the same.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, our next item is the, Dave's here, it's the approval of the revised memorandum of understanding with the city of Glendon. And I know, Dave, we've gone over this a couple times with our highway
Yeah.
tracking committee, and
We went through it a little bit several times with our staff as well as the city staff, and I think Jenny's taken a look at it as well as the city's attorney as well. And what we really kind of run into that was a little different, we've done several of these, but one of the big differences, we've got the stormwater pond, so we kind of had to work through that. There was actually acquisition of land for the pond. There isn't going to be any acquisition for the street project itself. We need a little bit of temporary construction clearance, just so we can tie into the project on the side. So we've got like 72 parcels there, but they're only temporary. For the most part, the project, it's got several different parts of it. We've got the sidewalk and trail, and those are split 50-50. And we do have some federal aid dollars to the tune of $375,000 that we've got for that. The street lighting is 100% city. We've got reconstruction of our street that includes a little bit of parking for the city, so it's split 70 county, 30 city. We've got sanitary and water main that's completely city, 100% city. We've got reconstruction of a street that goes to the stormwater pond that we need to reconstruct for the stormwater pond, and that's split 70 city, 30 county, because that's going to be their street when it's done. And then we've got the railroad quiet zone improvements that the city's working on, and that's also 100% city. So I think we've got everything ironed out pretty good as far as acquisitions and even some of the permitting, because those are sometimes costs that are overlooked, and those are also going to be shared according to that schedule. I think it's subdivision 4 that's got the box there, so.
Do we have costs associated, excuse me,
Go ahead, no, go ahead, Frank. Yeah.
do we have costs associated with all this? Linda knows how much it's gonna cost them and stuff like that, or?
We are sitting at about 80%, so things are getting pretty close, and I know you and I have had the same conversation, and I am a little worried, but I believe, yes, we do have final costs. It's not super itemized, or I haven't seen itemized cost yet, but I think we're in the well over $3 million.
Well, I think that's a good question that Commissioner Gross asked, because
Yeah.
we got to make sure, because ultimately, according to this MOU, we pay it all up front, and then we're going to bill Linda.
Correct.
And I just want to make sure that,
Why don't I reach out specifically to the mayor with that question, and prior to that, I'll get some dollar amounts that are as close as they are today from Alteg, from the design engineer, and I'll send that right to him, direct question, and see if they've got any concerns, issues with repayment to the county for that.
Frank, did you have any more
No.
comments? We had quite a bit of dialogue on this in our highway tracking meeting, and I know certainly one of the concerns that I raised was the issue about sanitary sewer and water main and all that, and we don't want to get into the process of being involved with those.
Absolutely not.
And so I think that was a shift in the plan, but, and thank you for doing that. I was.
Sure. Yeah, we don't want to set a precedent on
Right.
services that aren't
But
county.
The thing that's not on here is or maybe it is and I'm not seeing it, and that's the retention pond itself. What's the cost share on the
I
retention
think there
pond?
might be a bullet point, no, that's going to be 50/50, and that's included in the second one called storm sewer.
Okay, so that's part of the storm
Yeah,
sewer.
that's the way we looked at it, because essentially it's the concrete pipe that runs out to the pond as well as, and I think there's 3 ponds total, so it's not just the one bigger one that we need off-site, but it's also the 2 on-site ones as well, so. But it's all included as part of storm sewer. And then on the next page, Kevin, on page 4, subdivision 11 talks about stormwater ponds, and that's where it's a little more descriptive on how we're going about
Because-
things.
You know, because it's my understanding of the stormwater ponds, that's related to development, right? Isn't
Well,
that
the
caused by?
street, it takes the street drainage too, because right now
Okay,
there's,
so if you have new impervious
Well,
streets, then it requires.
right now there is no stormwater underground, it's all in open ditches,
Yeah.
and we're changing that. So now we're gonna have curb and gutter sections, so everything will be collected, dumped into a system, and put into a pond for a certain amount of time, and then slowly metered out into that coulee that runs through town. So it's a total change on stormwaters from pervious open ditches that drain into that coulee into a pipe system.
Do they have to put in a lift station for that?
No, we do not for the stormwater. There may be a small lift station getting it out. I think everything drains though. I think it's all gravity drained.
I guess I go back to previous comments, and I guess I just don't remember the county ever cost sharing
I don't think I've
pond
ever,
issues?
never built a pond.
Okay, and I guess.
15 years.
Yeah.
Been awful lucky.
Yeah, so what we're doing here then, we could be potentially setting standards for the future. when it
Well,
comes-
it's a law we have to follow. It's a, when you.
But is it the law that the county follows, or the
Oh,
law that the
absolutely.
city follows?
Well, anybody.
Yeah, but it's.
Could be
whose-
private
but
individual.
I guess it's whose jurisdiction is that?
Well, it's EPA. The city of
No,
Moorhead.
local jurisdiction though, whose MS4 would it fall under? Would
Well,
it
they're
fall under
outside of
Glidden's,
the
or would it fall
urbanized
under
area.
ours? Huh?
They're outside of the urbanized area. This is not in the MS4 area.
Okay, so
But
they're
it-
not, they don't have to deal with the MS4?
No, it's actually, when you add impervious wherever you are, inside or outside of an MS4, you're required to do ponds. When we do our rural projects, we're able to do this stuff in our ditches.
Right.
And there's a little bit of there's a paragraph that talks about grass swales, and we're able to work underneath that caveat. It's a real fine line. That might go away someday too. But like just north of Walmart, City of Moorhead had to put all them ponds out there on the west side of 34th Street. We've been really
Well,
lucky.
I'm not disputing it, I just want to make sure that we
Sure.
understand what we're
Yeah, I'm glad we haven't had to do any
getting
ponds.
into an MOU.
Just haven't had the right situation yet where we've had to build them.
It makes sense to me if it's outside of the urbanized area. I had the same question, but I mean,
Sure.
if it's outside of what that is.
The nice thing that we have is we've got a 50-50 sponsor on this. We've got a partner to share with. Otherwise, it'd be 100% county.
Yeah, but we wouldn't be extending that, isn't that road going to that spot for the purpose of development?
We'd have to
though?
put a pond somewhere, though.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be the size and to the degree that it is, because they're also looking at it for that development, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I guess I did kind of have that same question. They said it wasn't over-designed, but yet it would be big enough to handle the other acres right beside ours.
Because they're looking at a potential subdivision right there.
It's not really a subdivision, it's a few lots, so it is, but
A few lots. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so you're looking for approval of this MOU.
So what we're trying to do is, as soon as we get this stuff all ironed out and both entities pass it, then we're also gonna work with the landowners for the pond location. And we need to get all that stuff, being this is a federal aid project, there's certain things that have to fall in place, and we just wanna make sure we get signatures on that land acquisition that will go into the city's name, but just kind of keep things moving.
Well, I think you're working with the city of Linden, so I'll make a motion to approve this MOU.
I'll second
We
the
have a
motion.
motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. All right, Dave, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, our 8:45 item is West Central Juvenile Detention Center. We have a few items here, and Mr. Berg's going to join Stephen. And Stephen, before our meeting this morning, I asked I'm requesting that we redo your order here and start with your third request here, and that's permission to utilize Cass County Juvenile Facility for overflow. I think we should start with that one first.
Sure.
And Mr.
I've got the extra one over there.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes. Go ahead.
Stephen and I talked a little bit about this and thought that we should probably talk in general terms about this whole situation a little bit that's been going on for a couple of years. And I think you've heard from both of us about the stresses and strains of the juvenile center and the demands for service over there and what's happened in the region. I think we've reported occasionally that different juvenile facilities around the state, I think there's been about at least 3 that have shut down in the last 2 years, and all of these factors are putting pressure on our juvenile center, and we see it in out-of-home placements, and you folks established an out-of-home placement committee to talk about how we deal with the growing costs, I should say, of out-of-home placement. And this kind of flows into, his presentation today, I think, flows into that just a little bit. And Rhonda, I guess thought she would join us up here. because we feel that the juvenile social service out-of-home placement piece of youths that need possibly some special attention and are difficult to find placements on can fit into this equation as well. So there's a lot of moving parts to this, and we needed to do something, and we've talked about it for quite a while, and we, as we reported, we met with Cass County a couple of weeks ago. We've met with them over probably the last 2-3 months, and they have come forth with a commitment, and we felt it was time to come to the county board for at least a heavy discussion and a path forward with you folks as well, because on the 7th of September, the consortium, the 11-county consortium of the Juvenile Detention Advisory Board will be hearing a lot of information, and a commitment is being asked from them as well. So I guess where it goes today, it needs to get off the ground zero, and since Clay County is the host of the Juvenile Center and holds a lot of the cards, we need to give you as much information as possible and see where you folks want to go on this. So, and I know there's several stages here that this has to be addressed, and you've asked for the temporary outlet in Cass County to be updated on the agenda, and so with that, I'll turn it over to yourself or Steve.
So Brian and Stephen, maybe we can start this off by saying that you know, as we when you refer to Cass County and their commitment to some significant dollars, that's into a long-term solution. That long-term solution, meaning even if we were to get that thing going now in terms of final design or whatever, we would still be looking at that facility not being available to us till sometime in 2019 at the earliest.
That's correct.
Right? So just a reminder to everybody is that on a daily basis, that facility has been full, and we've, on a lot of cases, have declined several children from coming in there, and some of those being from our member counties who are paying us, and we even had requests from others who would like to use our facility, but we haven't been able to allow that. So, you know, we asked Stephen to try to come up with us a way to do what could we do and start as soon as possible that would alleviate that or stop that and stop Steve from having to pull his hair out trying to figure out what to do. And it's been a strain for your staff to deal with that.
Right. Yes.
I get that. But so tell us, Stephen, about this proposal with Cass County and why that would be good for us.
Yeah.
And
Mr. Chair, you hit on just a very, very important point here. You said a long-term commitment and a long-term solution. I know the 7 years I've been here, it's been from year to year that these individuals, counties sign contracts with Steve, and Clay County ends up holding the ball if it's short and different things. And this proposal that we are pursuing looks to it basically a 20-year commitment that we have partners.
On everybody.
On everybody's part, and particularly across the river, that
we can get
it's
into
not
that
something.
in a little bit.
Okay,
but
great.
let's talk about this.
Sure.
Let's try to solve the short-term thing first if we can.
Right. As Administrator Berg mentioned, in the fall of last year, this board asked us to look at some short-term solutions. We looked at a number of options for ourselves, and two of those were out of the Fargo-Moorhead area, which we determined wasn't a real feasible option for us. In the spring, I sent a letter of inquiry to the Cass County Commission about the possibility of utilizing their 11-bed detention center that they vacated when they came over to our facility as a possible solution to some of our issues. In talking with Sheriff Laney and Captain Andy Froberg from the Cass County Sheriff's Department, they did some processing, and they determined that we would be able to potentially use the situation, but the Cass County commissioners would be looking for us to use it as an overflow situation. And so anytime that we got to 33 youth, we would be utilizing that facility for evening/overnight services. The youth would come back to the facility each day to take part in programming, school, food, medical, which really is a benefit to us, because when we looked at facilities outside of our Fargo-Moorhead area, the challenge that we run into is really into duplicating services with education and all those things, and it's really a cheaper option. Technically, just to be clear, we would be licensed under the state of North Dakota. Under this, we wouldn't be licensed through Minnesota. It's kind of a strange situation, though, because of our involvement with the kids coming there and back and forth. Minnesota does have a number of areas they would want us to make sure we had policies and procedures on. The great part about that is they've already, based on the information we provided them, we've already provided an official statement that said they would support the utilization of North Dakota's site. We really wouldn't see any changes. The North Dakota kids would still continue to come into the Moorhead site. We would then classify them based on the needs of our facility, and then look to move them over in the evenings. So.
Would that require a vehicle purchase?
It would. In 2017, we were up for the purchase of a new vehicle, and the vehicle didn't come until after the spring auction. So right now we have 4 vehicles, and so part of that recommendation would be to request to keep that vehicle just to kind of go back and forth from Fargo. So,
Jim?
Who would provide the staffing for the overnight over in Fargo?
Part of one of the things that we've discussed is we would essentially the answer would be we would operate the facility as if it were our own, even though it's located in North Dakota, because the benefit would be to all of our member counties. Our original plan was to look to place Minnesota youth into that facility for our treatment program, and we ran into a few hurdles just based on how statute works in the different states, which wouldn't allow that. But we're essentially looking at the same number of kids from our treatment program to what the North Dakota youth average. And so the benefit is anytime we move those youth to North Dakota, we're really seeing a full benefit for all of our 11 members, because it opens up those bed spaces here. Commissioner Campbell shared that we've been turning down members, and it's been fairly extensive. Last year we turned down 58 member requests. This year we've already turned 60 with 38 of those in the last 2.5 months. And so, and again, those counties are having to go place kids in other programs. And so, so we would be looking. We've established a budget, a preliminary budget that we've looked at, and part of that would be to hire an additional 2 day and evening counselors and 2 overnight counselors to deal with those.
Because you need 2 shifts for each day.
Yes, and so, and then we would utilize additional part-time staff to run, to deal with the additional kids. Because while we're located, while they're located over in Fargo, majority of the day they're going to be located here in Moorhead. So we need to make sure that we make those adjustments to the staffing plan.
One of the things that we've been talking about, and because the budget's critical, and what Commissioner Haney asked is really important, is what, so that raises all these extra costs. And so what does that do to the daily bed price then of West Central, that everybody, and what we have to realize here is that we're now going to have the ability to house 11 kids at night over there, which then frees up and allows additional revenue to come in that we couldn't get before. And we're anticipating and expecting the demand is so high that that's not going to be a problem in getting that extra revenue, and that would offset that cost. And that would actually shift over into the long-term solution too, because once the long-term solution comes in place, we're going to need that staff for that as well.
Correct. And we looked at, from an operating standpoint, it'd be about $533,000 to operate the Fargo site. Again, the majority of that, like our current budget, is mostly staff.
So that's, you know, so that's like somewhere around 6 additional annual bed increase, you know, bed, right, to get to that, 6 or 7?
Right, we're looking at, yes, and I think the benefit to us is, in 2017, our bed price is $83,500. Under the plan that we've established, the revenue that we would utilize to run the site wouldn't come from our members. In fact, the plan that we had before keeps our budget at $83,500 for 2018, even with the addition. What we're looking at, how we're looking at paying for that is, as Commissioner Campbell mentioned, looking at up to 3 youth from non-member counties coming in to offset some of that cost. And we also, since 2010, when we established our bed purchase plan, if there was bed space available, member counties could utilize the facility above what they paid for, as long as there was space. Of course, that's become somewhat problematic with our issues of late. And in our July meeting, our advisory board agreed that was an outdated plan, and they're no longer, moving forward, we're no longer going to give service above the number of days that they purchase.
So if a county, one of our member counties purchased half a bed, they basically buy 180 days.
Right.
And once those 180 days are done, they pay a rate per day.
Correct.
So, and that's something that we didn't have before, so that's going to be a benefit. And it was also designed to be an encouragement for counties to pay for what they use and what they expect. Some counties were, you know, buying 2 beds and averaging 4, and that's not going to happen anymore under, you know, and we as all 11 counties agreed to that at our last meeting, that we will not do that anymore.
So there's no refund of it. Say you buy 180 days, and you only use 100 days.
Well, but that's a discussion that we're going to have when it comes to a potential new, whether it would be a joint powers agreement, because like Mr. Berg said, we're going to get into, when we redo this thing, it's going to take a long-term commitment from every member county. We're going to ask them all to say, you're in this for 20 years, because if we're going to go into this investment, we need you there, so we're going to have that. And then part of the process will be, you know, keep in mind now, we're going to be, on the long-term plan, we're going from what we currently have is 33 beds to 61 bed potential. So the potential for revenue is really significant.
Correct.
There for that piece of it. So, so might there be an opportunity, and I know this is something that Commissioner Peterson and Commissioner Steen from Cass County have also raised, is that, well, what if they're, and typically what we could see is an adjustment the following year in the bed price, as opposed to a refund like we might get that we get with insurance from MCIT. But then it would be reflected in an adjustment to the following year's bed rate. So it's, you know, I think it's a good financial plan that we're moving forward with here. But
Well, and Mr. Chair, in response to Commissioner Gross's comment on the refund, you know, I think we're so far beyond people or counties just utilizing what they need, because we can't build a jail and say we only want to use this amount of beds. We have to provide a service. All these counties have to provide a service to these juveniles, and it can't be just what usage they have. There's overhead costs, there's fixed costs.
The facility's still got to be there.
The facility's got to be there. It's just like building a jail, and it's a 200-bed jail, and you say, well, we only used 100 beds last year, so therefore that's all we're going to pay for.
Well, that's
can't
where
help
we
it.
were 6 or 7 years ago,
Yeah.
where the other counties were paying for what they used. Well, we couldn't function any longer based on that.
No, I agree
We were
with
at the
that.
point
and
of shutting down, so it's.
I agree with that policy, and it's a good policy. It's just that I wanted to know, since we are going to charge them extra, are we going to refund that?
And part of this discussion that we had in terms of you're gonna only get what you pay for, so to speak, and then you're gonna pay additional. That has actually spurred some discussion, and I think you've already had some requests to up
Correct, that's true.
the
Yes.
bed price,
Yep,
you know, how much they want to buy.
Right.
And again, that goes to making things more secure financially for us. And for those, and then we also, at our September 7th special meeting, we're going to be looking at setting a rate that would be per day for a member county who exceeds what they bought. And keep in mind now, this applies to every member county, including Clay County. You know, so if Clay County goes over, which we were last year, we were one of the guilty parties last year in terms of having more people in than what we paid for in beds. That's why the request to go to 9 this year.
10.
Or 10 this year, yeah, excuse me. So, but the whole concept there is to, you know, make sure that the revenue is there, and I think it's a pretty good plan, you know, but,
Question.
sure. Yeah.
I think this presentation is great. The piece that I continue to get hung up on is the North Dakota and the staffing that's facilitated by us. I've made it clear that I'm uncomfortable with even staff that is Clay County staff operating in Otter Tail or Becker and some of these different grants. And I assume that Clay County will then assume the liability of the staff, right? And so if there is an issue, is that contracted that all of the member counties with juvenile will absorb that liability as well? I mean, that's the piece that, I mean, do we currently have staff that's operating in another state?
Currently, no, we don't. But our bylaws do dictate, in fact, if we have overages, that there's how we deal with it, and there's also an event that where we have revenues under expenditures that our member counties are responsible to address those things.
I think Commissioner Mosier raises a good point that we should get clarification on, and that's in terms of our insurance provider making sure that those employees would be covered working across the border. I think that would help solve that.
That brings up another question. Would we be subject to North Dakota withholding and unemployment regulations? No?
No.
I don't think so.
No, I'm positive of that,
All right.
because we have several
Yeah.
employees that it's where your domicile is.
And I have had a dialogue over the last couple of days with County Administrator Wilson of Cass County, and they would be looking to have a contract, a use contract that I'm sure would lay out some of those issues.
So, you know, so I think on a short-term basis, we need to do something, and we need to do something now. You know, so.
When can this start, Steve?
You know, we're shooting for mid-October, is probably as quickly as we can. Like you said, I mentioned we would need some additional staff to cover this expansion. And so that would, I know this board doesn't meet for another couple of weeks, and so that would put us back a few more weeks. I know that North Dakota is, we've requested to go over there. North Dakota is already updating the facility, and painting, and getting it prepared for an inspection from North Dakota. And so they're moving forward, and so I think as soon as we can get it staffing, as soon as we have an agreement, I think that we would be ready to go. Our goal again would be to go by mid-October, because I think.
And Stephen, when we were talking, didn't you say that you already have a commitment or something where we would get $40-some thousand in
we did
additional revenue?
In anticipation of this, again, I think I mentioned we've.
I mean to finish out 2017.
Right, we continue to turn down non-member counties, and we, in anticipation that this went well, we did accept a youth from Pennington County on our sex offender program, which is, you know, barring behavior issues, would be a guaranteed $42,000 of revenue for the rest of this year, and so.
And that would help cover these costs from October 15th to.
Right. We're anticipating about $111,000 to operate for about 2.5 months. That would be the first 42. And from our non-member standpoint, paying above and, or from our member standpoint, paying above and beyond, we'll be coming with a solution on September 7th, which any of the scenarios that we spoke about will cover the cost for 2017. So there's calculated risk, but I think in this case, we're very well on our way.
Where is this building located? I mean, we're gonna get involved with people saying, no, not in my neighborhood type thing?
No, it's actually the facility that Cass County vacated.
That's
for
what
their
they used
detention
before
center.
Ford, their detention center.
So it's, there's a couple pictures, I think, in your packet of it. It's located on 10th Street in the annex across from the courthouse, in the social service building.
Okay.
And so no, it's,
Yeah, it's where they were for years and
Yeah.
years, so.
Yeah.
Very good, okay,
It's going to be used for the same purpose before they became members here.
very good.
So I think it's, when you look at that option compared to, one of our other places was to look at Fergus Falls, there was some, and we were looking at $20,000 a month just for rent there, and that's just was not an option for us. So this has turned out to be
That's a
really
good
deal.
point, Mr. Chair, because I was going to mention that Steve and I did take a trip down to Fergus Falls to look at a facility that was built just for this purpose, and the rent was high, the transportation costs back and forth. We could do it because kids ride buses every day back and forth, but still an hour away versus a few minutes away, this is just a better solution in
Well,
our minds.
I certainly encourage our board to act on this, and I think we could do it in a way that could, take care of Commissioner Mojo's concerns about the liability issues being in North Dakota. I think we can incorporate that into a proposed resolution that's subject to, that insurance is there to cover liability issues and those types of things. I think it would be in our best interest to move forward with this, and it would really help with our special meeting on the 7th to be able to give clarity to the issue with our member counties. I think they fully support what we want to do on this short-term solution, as well as some long-term issues that we're going to talk about next. So,
I'll move to utilize the Cass County facility with the county attorney's review, having a satisfactory review of the liability issues.
okay. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion?
And I guess if there was liability issues, could it not be worked out that Cass County would hire those positions and then an adjustment be made on the rent?
Well, if I can, there is no rent being paid for this
Not
facility.
rent, bed rent.
It's bed charge.
But,
I mean, that,
see, because we're still getting all of their revenue from the bed purchase. And so maybe we could, if there gets to be a
That's
liability
what
issue, we could probably,
that's something that I'm more comfortable with.
well, but it's, I'd rather not go there, but if we had to, I think we're going to find that the liability thing is not going to be an issue for us. But I mean, certainly if the liability comes back as an issue, then that's an alternative that we could look at, would be to have.
Mr. Chair, I think the liability question is a very good issue because frankly, we have talked about that before, even when we went with the Partnership for Health on the health issues. The more employees you add, the more liability there is on employment issues and everything else that goes along with it. And I guess if we were to offset it just a little bit, I'm looking over here at Commissioner Whalen, and when they went into the dispatch operation, we get those services and they're North Dakota employees. They don't come over on this side, so there's a difference. But still, there's a service that we are buying that we don't have to take on that liability. So in the temporary situation, it is a concern though, because the more employees it's more of my time, his time, your guys' time, and everything. So I appreciate that concern about that.
All right, so we have a motion and a second, and I think, maybe, Jenny, maybe you can let us know if we run into problems with liability issues.
Yeah, I can certainly do that. I mean, there's liability, period. There is liability. I don't know if North Dakota would have if they have active insurance on the building itself.
That would be their responsibility.
That would be their responsibility. We'd have to define that. But I mean, there is Clay County liability, so then it would be discussing with MCIT make sure they're aware of this plan and that there's no hiccups in that regard.
With them being across.
Being across the river, whether there's some sort of exclusion or concern with that. But also then following up with Cass and asking about any policies they may have that would cover operations in the facility. What if there's a defect in the construction or,
Yeah.
and somebody gets hurt, you know, just an example.
Okay, any other comments or questions or concerns regarding the motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Okay, that's one. Now, Stephen, you have two more, and it's getting into, and actually, I think we might be a little, just slight premature in this first one where you're asking for permission to remodel and expand.
Sure.
I think it's, I think number two is probably more important right now as
Sure.
to, because before we give final approval, we need to have some numbers, and I think this board's going to want to see what a new budget would look like, because all of this stuff would be something that would, the financial piece of it would happen in 19 and beyond.
Correct. Yep.
And I think, we've laid out through our subcommittees some models that show how this is all going to work. This board hasn't seen enough of that to
Right.
make a decision today to authorize the remodel and expansion. So just so you know
Yep.
that, but we certainly I think it would be appropriate for us to talk about maybe getting Mr. Berg and yourself to work on the design component, but leading up to that, we should talk a little bit about what we would be planning, and so that this board has a better idea of what we've discussed to date through our committees.
Sure.
So between the two of you, I don't know how you want to present it, but
Just a kind of brief introduction. It's hard to believe, but this board actually approved us to start working with the Michael J. Burns architect firm back in March of 2015. And so we've been looking at different drawings and different possibilities since that point. It's been beneficial because the Michael J. Burns was actually the associate architect back in 1996 when we built the facility, and the actual architect, Carrie Puser, still employed there. And so it's been a benefit to have Carrie be real familiar with the facility already. We've been looking and planning. We've participated in the auto home placement committee, which has really been instrumental in providing insight and guidance into some of our programs, in the non-secure program. We've done a lot of planning with our advisory board, our advisory committees, and getting input that way. And so we've gone back on a few different drawings with Michael J. Burns, and the point that we're at today would take our facility from a 32-bed facility to a 61-bed secure program, and a 12-room, 15-bed non-secure program to a 31-bed program. And so kind of what we established in talking with Rhonda Porter and the Home Placement Committee for a non-secure program, it's not just a matter of adding beds, but it's a matter of adding programming is what we're looking at. And so in looking at that, what we're asking in this project would be a combination of a remodel and also an expansion. Maybe just kind of, you guys have some drawings here, but just to kind of give you guys a visual. Here's the juvenile center in the current location, and what we would be looking at is essentially squaring this building off all the way to through here. There would be a two-level addition on this side. The sally port that's currently here the door would shift around, and all law enforcement would come through here. The majority of the first floor would be remodeled. Our renters. We would be asking our renters to leave. In addition to ourselves, our administrative office would also need to be vacated from there. And that first floor would become all non-secure beds. The north side would have 18 beds. And the second portion over here would have an additional 14 beds, which we would be looking to break out based on different programming that we would like to offer in that area. On the first floor here addition, this would actually be this portion of the first floor is all secure already. We would be looking to add an 8-bed intake pod. So many of our kids are coming in and out after court hearings, and so everybody would start in the facility here, and after court hearings, then we would classify them into the other areas. And so that's kind of what the footprint of the building would look like. Kind of just giving you an idea here for our first floor. Just to give you an idea, right here is the current facility. All this whole area would be the additional space for our non-secure program. Again, these are just some initial drawings. We would go from 1 classroom to 2 classrooms, and I think one of the things that we're most excited about in working with the Moritz School District is the education plan. We run school, year-round school, which is very different than the juvenile facilities in the state. They offer either no school or short bursts of school. The Moritz School District's been wonderful to work with to provide a year-round school. And we're looking at enhancing our education program with the addition of classrooms here, and then also I'll show you in the secure area. So currently this is the north side of our building. The administrative office for the juvenile center is located here. This section is the juvenile probation department, and across the hall here is the state probation. And so essentially we would be remodeling this whole area and then adding this section. Our first floor, again, these are the 8 secure beds. 8 of our additional beds are in secure. The great part about this is it really allows us to keep a good eye on those kids. Our staff are mandated to do checks when kids are in their rooms, and this is going to give us a better, more safe environment for those checks to happen. So we're excited about the possibility of having that. The discussion that we've had as far as our administrative office would be to moving into this area here. The great part from there is we have the breezeway that currently we do not use, but there's secure doors in this area on the other side of the breezeway, and so it's a real natural I guess place to expand for us if we were to move forward with that.
And that's occupied by Extension currently?
Currently. And so
they have asked for different space, I think, Brian, haven't they?
We've had, I think that there's been some discussion with, I know, Georgia over the years as we've talked about this. I know that we have, some other committees have this as an issue to talk about on the board level, so.
Have they, did you answer Kevin's question?
What was the question? Sorry.
In terms of Extension being able to go to another area within the Family Service Center?
Well, we really haven't had dialogue with Extension in regards to this, but there is some other space opening up. They have expressed even interest in more space in the building.
Right.
So, yeah, that's why we wanted to form a committee and expand the work of the Capital Improvement Committee to involve the commissioners in the layout of the building and where tenants are and things, because we think it's a real important issue going forward. So no, we really haven't had dialogue with them vacating this space.
But in order for this to work, we would have to find additional space.
We'll have to, yeah. There's many moving parts here.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions as far as the non-secure beds or anything located on the first floor?
Just to give you a better idea, secure and non-secure. So non-secure, what does that mean? They can go and come or as they please? Or?
Not necessarily. There has to be an unlocked outlet for them, so if they would choose to run, they would have that ability. And so, having said that, most of the kids can't leave. There are a number of kids from Clay County who will ride the bus and go to their school here in Moorhead. But a majority of the kids that are in non-secure are going to stay in the facility the same way they would in secure.
And that's dictated through a behavioral deal that's done mostly by the courts, I would assume.
Yeah, and the beds are not, or the sleeping areas are not locked, are they?
Correct, correct.
So insecure they are.
Yeah, your secure rooms are, your non-secure rooms are, homelier is the right word, but they're not as, they don't look like a jail cell.
So the come and go would be on the west side of the building more so, I mean, I get the Sally Port, but that, most of your foot traffic is gonna be on the west side?
So, I'm not quite sure, I guess, what you're asking.
Okay. The reason I'm asking this question is the Head Start preschool entrances are to the south and east of the Sally Port. And so I'm asking, where is the majority of the foot traffic for this building?
A majority of your foot traffic is still gonna be coming from the north side. Entrances, the exits for any of the programming are gonna be utilizing this.
And we could have a design for that to be, unless there was an emergency type of deal where they had to go out from the south. I think what you're getting at is just stay away from the Head Start area.
The unlocked doors are going to be, the access for the kids are going to be here and here.
Okay.
This door here and
that's locked.
Is going to be locked.
Okay.
So,
Thanks.
See, Steve and Mr. Chair, if we could go back to Commissioner Gross' question about secure and non-secure, because I think that is a good question that you kind of tussle with sometimes, and it's kind of like when you have a minimum security facility in a jail where the doors are locked, but they're locked so people can't come in from the outside. But if a person wants to break and run from the non-secure, they can do so. But the problem is they're there under court order as well, and if they choose to do that, then
they lose that privilege.
Then they'll lose that privilege, absolutely. Then they will come back in and go to the secure side if the judge feels necessary. So it's a controlled atmosphere with some pretty strict parameters, and they're there for a purpose, and they're there for their programming and different things.
And it may be, secure is offense related. I mean, non-secure, there may be no offense involved. There may be other issues.
Correct.
Yes, that's exactly right. So if that
So it could be
helps.
out-of-home placement or something like that?
Yes.
Yeah. So for social service placements, we cannot place in a secure facility like detention. Those
Okay.
placements
So this is an
come through.
opportunity for us to have another place here as opposed to taking them to out of county.
Right,
So it really gives some opportunities there.
yeah.
It's part of, it's not quite where we ultimately might want to be with a transitional thing, but it still has some opportunities to incorporate a little bit of that in
Right.
there.
Yep.
So it's,
In terms of this design, the second floor that's secure, those are mostly the corrections places.
yeah.
And then the non-secure is where a lot of the social service.
Keep in mind as we talk about this too, the non-secure portion of this facility is strictly Clay County's. That's not part of the West Central.
Okay.
This is strictly.
I didn't understand that.
Yeah, that part is strictly Clay County's. So when we talk about going from, and we're usually full in our non-secure, same thing as upstairs. And so when we go to doubling that, now Stevens also had many requests from other counties to be able to have people use our non-secure. And so that's going to open the door for us to, again,
Sell some beds to them.
yeah, offer some, or generate some revenue to help offset the costs of the new staffing that'll be there. So all this is to try to keep us from having this become a significant item on our tax levy. So we're trying to come up with ways that how this is going to self-fund itself.
Right.
So, and I know, Rhonda, that gets into, as we move forward here, and I know you can talk about, we'll get to that. Why don't you continue on, Stephen, with the site plan?
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions with the first floor? If not, I can move to.
I've got one.
Yep.
What about our parking? Are we taking away parking spots too then?
The only parking spot that we would be taking away is where we keep our fleet vehicles. Otherwise, it's just squaring off our building, and so, not significant.
Well, we
There's
would
no
probably,
other
and we'd probably then
couple
lose
where
the
you
two,
enter.
a couple of spots where the Sally Port would be. Because you couldn't
Right,
have
yeah,
cars parked
yeah,
right there.
right,
So you'd
yeah.
lose, we
Yeah.
might lose 4 or 5 spots out of
Right.
out of that.
Our second floor plan, again, this is all secure. Our non-secure, this is currently where our non-secure is located. We're really not going to do a whole lot of remodeling other than beds and windows in this area, but as far as from a structure standpoint, it's staying.
So that's the north side of the
This is the
building.
north side, yep. And so that's pretty much staying the existing of how it is. Again, this right here is the current facility. We would be gutting that area. We would be adding a couple more classrooms. We would be adding 3 visitation / conference rooms here. And then this would be the additional 14 detention beds. And so the ability, this area has the ability to be closed off, so in the event that we don't need those additional beds, we can lock these doors down and just operate from where we currently our needs are. I think when we look at, based on, again, we don't know what things will look like in a couple of years, but we really don't anticipate using this area initially. This is kind of our growth area. I think in our first floor, I think with the non-secure department, depending on the program and services that we provide, we really looked at those areas will all be utilized right out of the gate. And so one of the challenging parts of this of our initial meetings is the recreation area. Your kids in both programs have to have an hour of active rec every day, and so we spent a number of hours discussing how to get the kids from the first floor to the second floor without the kids being in the same area, because that's a challenging part. Is our secure or non-secure kids can never be in the same programming areas together, and so we do have a system set up where the kids will be able to use in secure and non-secure these areas, so we can share that space and save the costs. So.
Yeah, one question, you call that a detention area. What's the difference between secure, non-secure, and detention?
No, I'm sorry, detention and secure would be the same.
Okay.
Yep. So all of this area would be considered secure.
So keep in mind up on that north end right now, those are non-secure beds which would go down to the first floor. Those would become secure, so you would gain 10, is it 10 or 11 there?
There's 12 beds here.
12 there, and then you'd get another
14 here, and then 8 on the first floor.
Yeah, so that's where we're getting that, doubling the size of these secure beds. Stephen, one of the things too, and so when we talk about this, we're looking at this as being something, you said that could even be closed off. I have a hunch it's going to be used more than you think, just the way things are going. We're seeing this as probably something that would be a 20-year timeline of, in other words, we don't want to build just and be full right now.
Right.
So we want to have some capacity if we're going to do this so as we grow, because Clay County is growing, Cass County is growing, and Otter Tail County is growing.
Yep.
So with that in mind, have we asked Burns to design this for future generations where they could even have a third floor?
We have part of the financial piece that they provided was adding footings deep enough in this section where we could go up to a third.
That wouldn't be
level.
in our.
Hopefully not in our generation.
Not in our lifetime, but I mean, as you plan, maybe
Might be a
forget. But just like what we did with the law enforcement center, we made sure that the footings were there and everything to be able to expand above the garage. We don't need it now, but we don't want to put future boards in a position where they're landlocked now and we got
Right.
no place else to go, so.
Correct. Yep, we would have that capability to go up another.
We could have done a lot of different things with our current law enforcement center and jail had that thing been planned to go up, and it
Right.
never was, so.
Right. Yep. Anybody have any additional questions? We have, with additional kids, we'll have on the first floor, this is our nursing area. We would have a second area for nursing on the first floor. That would probably be one of our staffing needs would be more nursing services, but we have that built up. And again, we would go from our third floor, is how it sits now, has 28 beds in it. We don't anticipate doing any major changes or any major remodeling up there, maybe some tweaking. We do have to find, with the additional cameras and security, we'll have to make sure that we have a space that's adequate to handle all that. So we may have to do some remodeling on the third floor. But as far as that goes, currently our classrooms, if you recall, about a year ago, we moved our classrooms from the third floor down to the second floor into the space here. We would be moving 2 of those classrooms back up to their previous areas, and as I mentioned, we would go from essentially 3 classrooms up to 6 classrooms, and we've had some really pretty exciting discussions with the Warren School District about some potential changes that can happen that'll enhance the education for our kids, and so we're excited about that possibility.
Could you go back to the first picture of the overhead of the whole? So, I'm trying to see where the administrative office is going to be. That's going to be in the Family Service Center there? Or?
Yeah. This is where state extension currently is, right here.
Well, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Gross, that's been part of the discussion, but that's, I mean, just as all of this is, it's we're looking at all of the possibilities and heading down that road.
Mm-hmm.
We think that might be the most logical place for the administration to be connected to that, but we have to see how all the other things.
That's where that conference room is at, that other.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
And the same thing with like your question on the parking. We feel with adding on to this building in its present location and the additional parking up to the north, and then of course, where the law enforcement center is going to be eliminated, that's reserved for the pods, but that parking area is still going to be there, but yet law enforcement will be all out of there. So that will be very convenient parking for the juvenile center too. So, and going back to the 20-year issue, this was built 20 years ago, and the debt gets paid off this year, 2017.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at, expansion for another 20 years, the timing just seems to be pretty good.
Yeah, so if we can get into talking a little bit about the financing piece of it for, we've had some preliminary numbers come in at construction costs for this presentation of $6.5 million with soft costs, which is the stuff that would need to fill it out, so we're looking at 7.5.
Correct.
So in this process, and we've tried to break that down into responsibility of who to pay for, and or where the dollars go, and it's certainly public record now that Cass County voted, and so far they've agreed to pay up to $2.5 million for this on the secure portion, and we've estimated that the non-secure portion is to be about $2.5 million.
Correct.
Which would be Clay County's responsibility, and we can come back to that in a minute, which then leaves the other $2.5 million being the responsibility of West Central, which is all of us as member counties. And so the $2.5 million that West Central would be responsible for, as Brian just mentioned, we would bond for that again. I've told you to go back and to keep your I think we had $150,000, Lori, in the current budget that covered the principal and interest on the current bond, and that was a $1.5 million bond, so we'd look at something obviously to cover another $1 million. More than that, that would be built into an annual budget. But keep in mind now, we also believe that with the addition of those secure beds, that we're going to have significant revenue also. Between what we budget currently and then the revenues, we think it's going to cover not only the staffing requirement, but the ability to pay the bond on that piece, without having a significant increase to bed costs.
Okay, but where are we gonna, the money that we saved in these bonds, I mean, this is gonna be paid off in 2017. Wasn't that money gonna be put into the jail?
Not this bond. Not this,
Okay.
no, it was a bond on the Family Service Center, and, but this one was not part
Or
of
the
that.
law enforcement center.
And the law enforcement center, but it was not this one, because this one was, it was actually West Central's bond anyway. It was, so that covers that. And then it becomes the 2.5 million on the non-secure, and this is where I know you've had a lot of dialogue with Rhonda, and we're not expecting to come up with $2.5 million cash on the part of Clay County to pay for this. But if we bonded it, what savings do we have in what you're currently doing that could help make that bond payment, right? So so those are discussions, and I know, Brian, you've led that with your committee and group, and I think this board's going to need to have some comfort that that we can come up with some numbers there.
Yeah, and I think, Mr. Chair, Rhonda is ready to speak to that to some degree, because we had discussions of that when we were talking about out-of-home placement of what costs are going out of county. And she's going to talk about the cost, but yet the efficiencies that if some of those clients can be held within county, there's a lot of windshield time and a lot of social service time, a lot of the soft costs that we can't necessarily identify. I suppose you could put a number to it to some degree, but maybe I can just ask Rhonda to address that.
So, in the social service budget, we've levied $2.3 million for out-of-home placements. That's the net cost with considering revenue. So, I mean, that revenue goes toward paying for our out-of-home placements. So, the idea that we were looking at when we were looking at a transition house was, those kids that we have placed out of the county because we don't have the resource here. We looked at who are those kids, what are they costing us out of county. We did apply costs for the workers when they traveled and that kind of thing into that. And it was a little over $500,000 for 2016 that we paid for those kids that we thought if we had a transition house here, that would be revenue that we would be paying for the per diem. So it's really, when you say a savings, it's not necessarily a savings, we're just moving those costs from out of county to our programming.
We'd be paying ourselves.
Yes, in the form of the per diem, whatever that
Right.
per diem is set, our kids would now go here, we would pay for that out of the social service budget to West Central. So, it's really transferring that. I see that as the programming costs, not necessarily the costs of building the building. So that's, I guess, where the discussion comes in. But I suppose you build that into your daily rate. You build,
Right.
So I guess that's where it would come into play. And then, of course, you have our social service fund balance, but I don't, how you would want to handle that. But so that's where, and again, that was kind of a snapshot in time. We looked at all of those kids, and we'd want to do that again. The other thing is, as placements ebb and flow, and as courts, order kids into placements, 95, if not more than that, of our placements are court ordered by the court. And they're going to be looking at programs that provide a treatment. And so, as Steve said, it really is looking at what kind of programming are we offering within the non-secure side so that it compels our county as well as other counties to place here versus other facilities. But we would really be transferring the money we're paying out to our own facility. And that snapshot in time was really a little over $500,000 per year However, I think there's kids that we've called the juvenile center on for placement as well, that they were full, and so we had to look at other placements for short term until we could get them back here. So I think it may be more than that as well.
But, so when you say you were paying this $500,000 and it was for programming, that was probably in more than one location too,
Oh,
right?
yes,
So-
absolutely.
So the programming costs, because you could be having them in multiple locations outside of
Yes.
Clay County, but here it's all in one location. They would
Yes.
have the same, more of the same providers for this. So that 500,000 wouldn't be 500. You would, because you'd have more of the same opportunities to have them all dealing with the same professional group.
Well,
There might be some differences there
Yeah.
for requirements or whatever
Right.
needs, but.
Right. Well, we think absolutely our kids are going to be more successful in a placement here if we can keep them up in our county. And we think we'll see, our goal would be that we would see kids in placement for less period of time so that we can keep them connected to their service providers, connected to their families, and that they'll be more successful in placement. We won't be chasing around the state from placement to placement to placement.
Years ago, when meth was a real big issue in this area, and you can recall this, Rhonda, because you worked with me on this a lot, we were looking at a regional place for the meth population. And what we heard again, time and time again, from all the social service directors from all the member counties, is that although they liked the idea of having a regional thing, everybody felt it was best to have their kids or their people in their own county. And now obviously we have West Central, and not everybody can have a facility. It happens to be here now, and it's certainly going to be better for our Clay County kids to not have to move ours out of Clay County.
And, you know, there are going to be some kids, because of their significant mental health, that are going to need residential treatment out of our county.
Yeah.
Again, this facility can't be all things for all kids, we know that. And especially our younger kids, that's a population we're going to continue to play out-of-home placement for in foster homes. They're not going to go to the juvenile center. But again, we feel that it's the same analysis we did with the transition house. If we could build those transition services, some increased mental health services, we think kids that we're placing out of our county now could go to West Central, and we would have much more successful case planning and reduce costs in the end.
And Mr. Chair, when you're talking about the programming too, and we've had discussions about this, we had them in our out-of-home placement one, and we had them with Lakeland Mental Health when they were talking about the jail, is that when they establish a rapport with a counseling service or a counselor in person, they have much better chance of success if they stay that consistency. But if that person is shipped out of county, they work with a different program, and then they have to come back and reestablish that. Plus, I think at times, and I misspoke when I said that the windshield time and the social service time, she'd figured that in it, but there are other soft costs that would be advantageous, and that is sending family members out sometimes for visitations, and it's just a better healing process if those family members can be involved in the programming along with the child, if I'm not mistaken too. So there's a lot of reasons to, just like we talked about with the correctional facility, there's reasons to keep things local and the consumer local and the family members local in regards to a recovery process, if we can say it that way.
What is the age group that you work with?
We can take as young as 10 and involve kilograms, 10 years old. Generally, we don't, for non-secure, we generally take for Clay that young, but usually try to be older for other kids, but we're licensed to as young as 10.
How old?
Up to the age of, well, in non-secure up to the age of 18, in secure technically it could be up to the age of 21 under certain circumstances, but most of them are 18.
So if you go 18 or whatever, you get to be 19, you just get, what happens to you? You just...
Well, if we're talking about, want to put words in your mouth. If we're talking about the transition house, there are opportunities to utilize transition services past the age of 18 to give those kids that continued structure and best opportunity to be successful.
And one of the things we're required to do if it's a social service placement through our court is at age 14, we're starting in their case plan to look at transition planning. All of those things that you do for your own children when you're trying to launch them. Our social workers do that with our kids in out-of-home placement and the families that we're involved in. So
This plan, Rhonda, would this qualify or qualify as a potential transition use
well,
facility?
we have talked about, it's really the programming that goes into it, and I think that there's some internally, some things that you can, structure to make it feel a little bit more like a home environment, and where they could do some of those independent living things that we want those kids to do on a section of it. So we have talked about that. We've talked a little
So that
bit
could
about
be
it.
incorporated into design then?
Yeah, I think that would be important, and the programming pieces to go with that, for sure.
And one more thing, I'll reach over to, Mr. Chair, if I may, reach over to Rhonda again too, that she has indicated that there is certainly some interest on other social services in the region, that if we had a facility like this, that they would be interested in utilizing it. And not to say that we're out there looking for business, but when you build and you're building, almost doubling the size, there's going to be vacancies in this program for a number of years, and there would be
No, that's the whole
possibly...
idea, is that, hopefully we can generate some revenue.
In this program as well, yeah.
Just like what we talked about in a new correctional facility, we're looking at the potential of having state or federal prisoners in
Yeah.
there, while it's not.
If we've got the space.
Yeah, while we've got the space, so.
Yeah.
The piece about the programming as well as even with detention is that part of the beauty of this is maybe you've got a juvenile that warrants a secure detention stay, but does really well with programming. They could be moved down to the non-secure, does really well. They could be moved into transition services. I mean, it's a way for us to kind of serve kids in a multitude of ways in one program or in one facility, which is a nice option.
Well, there's a lot of moving parts to this project, and I think we've had a good dialogue this morning on it, and I know we'll still open up to questions here, but I think that what would be nice to see is we have the special meeting of our West Central group on the 7th, and we meet on the 5th. And it might be a good opportunity for us to maybe put down that financial plan better on paper for this board for the 5th to talk about the components of the 7.5 and where the funds are going to come from. And Stephen, I know you prepared some preliminary budgets, so maybe we should be able to see those. This board could look at those on the 5th. We'll be making those presentations to the full group on the 7th. That and some other agenda items dealing with what we talked about in terms of bed rates and those types of things for people who exceed their bed purchases. But I think we need to bring in this other component of it too. If we're looking at having administration move into that facility, we better start having dialogue on that other piece with your group, with the capital improvement group. Extension's going to want to hear about this, and they're going to.
I think we got to be September 7th.
September 7th as
On
well,
September
in the
7th.
afternoon.
Okay.
Don't we have an extension meeting too in September?
Do we have what?
Extension meets in September too, I believe.
Oh.
But maybe that could be something where Brian, maybe you and Stephen could maybe attend a part of that, just let them know what we're thinking about, and I think it's fair to them that they know that looking at this, and George
Yeah.
has got to be involved.
Well, yeah, and I certainly, Mr. Chair, hope to have a meeting with Ben fairly soon,
Okay.
you know, but we didn't want to start talking about that before the board.
Yeah, so I think, you know, and Brian, I know I've had some discussions with you, and I think one of the things that you think it's time for us to do now is to maybe go further along in negotiating with Michael J. Burns on, because right now we've been doing just kind of a time and type of deal, but
Materials, yeah.
but if we really want to move forward, we're going to have some more specifics, and you don't get those specifics without some design. So do you want to comment on what you would like to see us do there?
Well, yes, and Mr. Chair, in Steve's memo, it does say that he's requesting authorization from Plain County Board to negotiate and sign a contract. Well, what we really had discussed was endorsement from this board or approval from this board for further negotiation, and then we would bring a contract back for approval. But we've discussed a lot of things with Burns Associates and how we're proceeding forward, and we think we need to make a few more refinements before we bring that contract in. But this would be a giant leap to say that, you know, you guys are happy with moving forward with Burns and to bring in those final adjustments.
Okay, and I know that Lori's here this morning listening in on this, and I know that, Lori, you've had some discussions with Steve and this whole process that we're looking at, and I think maybe when we start looking at those budgets, your independent review of it too, maybe by the 5th would be good. If you want to share some insight with the board, I think that would be helpful. So if you can do that, that'd be good too, So you're looking at some permission to move forward with negotiating with Burns?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to move forward with negotiations with Burns.
Okay. Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? And then you would come back then with some
On
sort of a...
on the 5th as well, yes.
Okay, very good. All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. All right.
Well, thank you, Mr.
Well,
Chair. That's a
we
lot
went
of
a little bit long on this, but
information.
it's,
That's all right.
it's,
Thank you very much.
This board hasn't had the preview that some of us have had that have been involved with the committee, so it was important that we get this dialogue going. And obviously, if any board members have questions, they can contact Steve or Brian and get the answers between now and the 5th. So, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move into our 9:25 item at 10 o'clock. And that's a budget update. We've got Brian and Lori on that one as well. We'll get done.
I want to go as quick as we can.
We'll get done. You know, we want to we're kind of running behind, and we have commissioners have commitments, so we want to look at this.
This probably, Mr. Chair, shouldn't take too long. What you have before you, what I handed out was just a memo, which I do periodically during the budget process, and we had a pretty good discussion last week in regards to some guidelines that you asked Lori and I to look at the budget and try and make some adjustments or suggested adjustments. And this is for something for you to absorb then and discuss and give us further discussion or direction today after we go through this. So we'll run through them real quick, and please ask any questions or give us direction on whatever you want there. This is the same format of the memo, but the new requests have not changed, and I just identified them there for clarity on it. The correctional staff for the new facility, 15 correction officers and 1 re-entry. I did visit with Julie Moore about that, and she is saying that these are the parameters that DOC sets out, and this isn't for a full facility, this is for 150 or 155 occupants in the facility that she would need this much staff. Juvenile detention was a new request. We are going from 9 beds to 10 beds. That's an additional $83,500. We talked about that new copier. That's still in the new request. We can certainly work around that. That's $5,500. Social services does have, and I'll say public health have, 2 additional personnel, and that is some additional dollars that they're granting dollars that they're getting for Minsure to hire 2 new people, but it's 2 additional people, but it's no county dollars going out for that. Juvenile detention is converting some variable hour employee dollars to 1 full-time contained in the secure budget, and there was no additional county dollars other than the $83,500. That's the additional bed. So, and then I did add the addition there for the behavioral health component of the new correctional facility of $56,233. And I think you've just put that in the social service budget for now. We didn't.
In the regular budget.
In the regular budget. We didn't really know where it was going to land.
And that was my comment, because I think juvenile detention would absorb some of that.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is probably existing contracts and their professional services. I think he's got $108,000 in what we just got today.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would be interesting to see if that will lower that.
We'll work on that component of it.
Thank you.
And then the other items, we just made one adjustment, and that was the MCIT dividend was reduced to $180,000. I think we had $220,000 in there, and that's what it was for 2016, but we've gotten the final figure on that. We had a slight increase, or we had an increase in the county program A of $248,000. That was already in the budget. Oh, the insurance. Lori had placed $500,000 in the insurance. And after our discussion, we felt we could reduce that by $150,000. The reason why we felt we could do that, in our discussion with the insurance committee and visiting with Darren about that in the past, they said that they amortize that over, as my memory was, 30 months. Darren said that it's 24 months, and maybe he's clarified that point. But it's not, they don't go from year to year. They take a 24 or 30-month average. And to go from a 0.8 last year up to back to again 12, that I think is
Well, it doesn't
is
seem
not-
logical if we
Right.
had a low year, that
to
should
jump
carry
that
over.
much.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're going to have to do some, if they're not going to try and even out that spike, we're going to probably have to do that within county and maybe budget the same amount every year so that it is as a floating figure versus having these spikes. I think it's just a better way to go.
Kind of like the elections thing then.
Right, yep.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So then, going down to the suggested additional cost removal, the housing abatement, Lori has refigured that, and the figure is $453,000, and we did have $480 in the budget, but we've removed the $480,000 because, as in the past, we have looked at that as a temporary expense, and so we do no longer have that in the budgeted amount. We'll take that out of reserve. Court administration, if you remember right, we doubled that, went from 100, I think, to 200,000, and we looked at it a little bit closer. We felt we could reduce that by $10,000. Public defender, I think I budgeted $95,000. I think we've been running around $89,000 on that, so we did drop $5,000 on that. The correctional adjustment, if you remember right, the new request was $700, and I think the new request is in your packet there, but new request was $700 and some thousand. As Lori and I went through it, we felt very comfortable with looking at $500,000 of one-time dollars, and certainly there might be some more room there as we analyze it some more, but we felt very comfortable with taking that out. We had placed $50,000 back in unanticipated, and we'd removed that item a couple years ago, so we removed that $50,000 again from unanticipated. County highway, if you remember right, during Dave's presentation, he had $450,000 in there because we thought that had been approved to go from $400,000 to $450,000. And after we had our last highway, we reviewed that again and said, no, we had not.
And our 5-year plan had it at 400.
Had it at 400, so we reduced that, and Dave's well aware of that, that's been reduced, the $50,000. The correctional facility in LAC, debt reduction, if you remember right, we've been placing $50,000 per year in that account, and I think it's up to $250,000 that we are assessing right now. And Lori and I discussed that, and we said, you know, that plan was undertaken when we weren't sure we were going forward with the sales tax, and now that that is all locked in, we thought maybe we could suggest to you that maybe in 2018 we do not assess that additional 250.
Well, I think
Or
it's
I'm sorry, the
50.
additional 50.
I think it's a good idea, at least till, and then next year at this time, we'll have some history on that sales tax
Yes, you
collection
will.
to see how that,
Right, in our sales tax calculations, we were extremely conservative.
well,
You
yeah, I
know,
certainly
so-
hope we were.
Right.
Yeah, let's hope we were, yeah. So health insurance, I already addressed that, we reduced that 150,000. And then the last 2 years, we've utilized some of social service reserves of 200,000, and we utilized $200,000 worth of general reserves, and then we utilized $100,000 of public health. So in order to keep the reserves that we had utilized last year and keep everything on the even keel, we thought we could suggest the reduction of that. And so that was a 1.795 reduction. And then I attached the page. Lori did her calculations on that, and I know it's still not where you want it to be, and so we have more work to do, but we thought we would
I know I brought up
forward.
something to you yesterday, and I mentioned it to Lori too, a couple of other things that I think that, I know Commissioner Mojo's raised it on the land sale issue, for example, on that one
Yep.
property. I think, using that to help on a one-time deal, I think would be, and that's another 200, was that 250,000?
260.
260,000, that could, I think we could use that. In Dave's highway budget, he had put in there, he had the revenues of the 2 buildings, and we had talked about this in the highway committee, and I think those total a little over 100,000. I think it was between the 2 buildings that we were selling. Well, one was,
58 and 40.
One was 30, wasn't it?
No, one was, it was closer to 40. It's like
yeah, I
38
think
or
it's
something.
Okay.
Right around 100.
It's around 100,000, and in Dave's budget, he had incorporated paying back solid waste at 50,000 a year for 5 years. But then he had put that 100,000 as revenue into his budget. And what I'm suggesting is that if we wanted to, we could take that back out and apply it, on a one-time thing here. And then Dave, instead of paying back solid waste over 5 years, pay back over 7, and it still would be budget neutral to him. And I think, Laura, you would agree with me that the solid waste fund wouldn't suffer from that? Not a bit. So I think that would be another thing that we could do that could help. So there's another 350 between those two roughly.
360, yeah, 350.
So that's and I think and then you're going to hear from your departments today, Brian?
Yeah, by the end of tomorrow,
By the
we
end of
wanted to
tomorrow,
hear
okay.
from them, and it's some of the information has been trickling in, and like Lori said that she had about $300,000 extra in her budget. Oh, it's not that much.
$300.
No, but I feel that every department is going to come up with some suggestion, and frankly, what we asked of them was if they feel pretty secure in their expenses, to look at also the revenue side. And I would like to ask Nancy to come up, Gunderson, and she want to talk about.
Good morning, Nancy.
Good morning.
wants to talk about a little bit of a revenue suggestion change. And the reason for kind of the urgency on it is that if we're going to do that for 2018, we need to get the information out to the townships and the cities, the smaller cities, as quickly as possible. So if I may, Mr. Chair, turn it over to Nancy to discuss what she's suggesting or proposing. I don't know what would be the word here.
As some of you might recall, in the summer of 2013, we did a recalculation of the fees that we charge out to our contract holders that we do their assessment work for. And so what we did, there was a large increase due to updating record counts that hadn't been done since 2004. And record counts kind of take into consideration new construction, splits, combos, new plats, those types of things. Anyway, we did the update, and we've been using that same billing amount then for assessment 14 through 17. The rates, though, that we used to do this calculation on, as far as I can see, were being used the same rates that were in place from 1994. And that's that $7.25 and $2.25 fee. And so I'm proposing if we could add a 25-cent increase to each one of those types, and then we'll do a recalculation again, looking at new record counts, which again takes into consideration new construction and things like that. And I did a couple of examples on your memo just to see what kind of a change it might create. We haven't completed the whole city yet, but like Alliance Township, it's roughly a $250 increase, and the city of Dilworth is over a $2,100 increase.
And Mr. Chair, Nancy and I visited about this, and just for clarity on this, she goes by the record count, not necessarily the parcels, and the revision that was done in 2014 was not a rate increase, it was just a recalculation of the properties that are out there. So properties had been added, but the fees had not been changed.
Right.
And so the fee, and we've talked about this, that fee adjustment could probably occur every other year or every third year or something like that. There could be a scale, because even now she's suggesting that it go from $7.25 a record or a parcel. I mean, there's difference, but I identify parcels versus the record, but in a 25-cent rate, and she said some of the townships will even go down because there's been a different classification, but where you've seen buildings and property splits and different things, you're going to see an increase, and it is more work for them. So we should be looking at a calculated, versus again talking about that insurance, it should be a gradual increase, and this turns out to be like about a 3.5% increase over a 4-year period. So it's less than 1% increase each year of the last 4 years. So even in the last 4 years, it's really insignificant if you look back the 20-year increase in the parcels. But she doesn't know. She's just got 2 examples there of probably your fastest growing rural city. But you know, you've got Eglin Township, which has had a lot of growth out there, and Holly has done well, and Barnesville has done well. So, you know, it might be, it might run in the $7,000 or $8,000 range when it nets out. So,
is this a yearly fee that we charge them?
Yes, it is. It's an annual fee
Whether we
to maintain.
reappraise them or not?
Correct.
So if you are agreeing with that, we felt that we would need action by this board to get it moving and get those notifications sent out, because I think, is it the cities? I don't know about the
Cities that do.
townships.
Townships, they've already done their levy for next year.
For 2018?
Yep, they do that in March.
Okay.
Yep, but the cities are September.
Cities are,
30th.
yeah, they're the same time as we are, so we thought maybe that we'd have to get this information out fairly quickly
Correct.
if we wanted to move forward with this.
Okay. I guess I I obviously, when it comes to something like this, our fees should be somewhat tied to our costs. That's how I've always thought of these things, we're not in the business of making money, but at the same point, when we're providing something for the benefit of all taxpayers, we should be collecting the appropriate fees from the people who that service is directly related to them. In this case, it's everybody, their properties, but we should be charging them our costs. And if we haven't changed our rates since the 1990s, I'm wondering,
I agree. I think it should reflect what it costs to provide the service, and I think this is a minimal amount to helping cover those costs. You need a motion. I'll make a motion to approve the suggested assessment rate increases.
Motion, is there a
Second.
You have a second? Any further discussion?
Yeah, I don't know, I just feel like we're acting like the state does, we need more money, so we're gonna charge the counties, and here are counties, we need more money, so we're gonna charge the cities and the townships, and we just keep passing on these rates and stuff, and,
Well, I look at it a little bit different than that, Frank, and it's the state stops giving us money, but mandates that we continue to provide the service. Here, the service is there, and we just want to make sure that the appropriate rate is being charged for the service. I think they're two different things,
From my perspective, if I have to pay a quarter more so that my farmland is not levied higher, I'll pay a quarter more. That's my perspective.
I think maybe some point in time, sometimes when you can tell on this is if we end up finding townships looking for alternative ways to have their assessments done. That's a true sign that if we're too expensive, they have the option of going on their own. And that's always an option that they have, and I don't think that they're going to beat what we have to offer in terms of those appraisal services.
do we have townships to do that?
Pardon?
Do we have townships to do their own assessment?
We only have one now. We picked up 2 more for this assessment year, so there's only one that still has a local.
I think it's just based on the history of when we have last done this, price of everything has gone up since the 1990s. So, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, the same. Motion carried. All right.
Mr. Chair,
Thank
maybe,
you. Yep. Oh, go ahead.
maybe just a comment.
Yep.
I know we did this at budget time, and we did it because of revenues or expenditures, but it's probably something that should be done on a regular basis to do exactly what you said, try to recover our costs that we're investing in, because our assessors cost us more every year, and we should spread that cost over the service that they're giving, so.
So it'd be nice to come back maybe next year with a schedule of some sort.
Well,
We can look at that.
I think we need to, really tie it to, what does it, what's your staffing cost to do it, and how do we cover that through that process? But I think it's good to have the dialogue. Lori, one question for you. We need to wrap up here pretty soon this morning. I know when is the deadline for the preliminary levy?
September 30th for the county.
Okay, so it used to be the 15th, I was
Yeah, they
thought.
changed it a couple years ago.
All right, so we do have a little bit of time yet, so we'll continue our budget discussions on the 5th, and a little bit more. You can give us an update, and Brian, on what you've heard from the departments.
Right.
Okay, and then Lori, you'll be here for that discussion on the West Central thing on the 5th too.
On the 5th,
On the
yeah,
5th.
having these to be on the 6th.
I just had one point, in looking over the budget documents, I just decided to take one line item from a consistent amount of departments, and I know that printing and publishing, for instance, is in almost every budget. And there are departments that exceed what's budgeted, but a lot of times there's a $700 or an $800 budgeted that hasn't been used for 3 years. And I get if we want to kind of avoid any spikes, but those are, going back, if they haven't been used for 3 years, I don't think they really should be budgeted for anything. And I understand that there are some, for instance, planning and zoning or I think assessments, you advertise more than others, but can we eliminate
Yeah.
those?
I think in some cases we can, but what happens sometimes, for example, you might not use that item 1 year and they'll say, yes, but we expect a retirement. So that's where the costs come out for advertising the position. So it might lay there for 3 years and not utilize it, and then they take it out, and that's when will need it. At
But
least
we're
that's
still
the
levying
justification.
for that, though.
Oh, yes, oh, yeah.
So,
part
I
of their
mean, I
budget.
just,
Mhm.
if
It doesn't
that-
go, no, I'm sorry.
If that were to come out, I mean, can we not be creative and find something else? I just have a hard time levying for something continually if we've not used it for 3 years.
Yep.
Look at that.
Yep, Mr. Chair, I agree. That's what we look for when we go through, is what
Right.
has there been there.
I mean, I understand for elections, for instance,
Yeah, we keep that.
for this year, we don't really have anything, but then you kind of make up for the spike in it. But, you know, if we look back and don't see anything, you know, $700 or $800 adds up for all these different departments.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. We'll continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, let's go into committee reports. Commissioner Mojo, would you like to start?
Yeah. Thank you. Last week I attended the going away party for Maggie from Solid Waste. She's been a benefit to that department, so we wish her the best as she moves to the city of Moorhead, I believe. I attended the Planning Commission last week where we issued a new permit to Alexandria Gravel in Hagen Township. It was a gravel pit that hadn't been in existence or operation for a while, so it's just resuming that, and Hagen Township did sign off on approving that. And then Bison Ridge, if you recall, that new development that's south of the Boughton Addition off of Highway 10, we approved the interim use request for 3 years so that they can use the gravel there for upgrading the township roads. And there was a significant discussion from the BRB Urban Expansion District Tier 1 for the storage unit. The city of Moorhead before had been against it. Now the two city council people representing that ward are in support of that, and so that was unanimously recommended to this board to allow that. There were some...
So that will be coming back to us.
That will be coming back to us in September at some point. So. There was some discussion and dialogue in regards to enforcement of our permits that are approved. Both Alliance Township, there were 4 or 5 residents that had an issue with a resident that did not get the proper permits in development and is encroached on the 4 surrounding landowners. And also there was a citizen from out by Rolog that had some problems with lack of enforcement on the conditions that were put on permits. And I think Commissioner Gross and I have talked significantly about, we're hearing from the townships, if we hear their concerns at the Planning Commission level and put conditions on it, we should be enforcing it in some aspect, and that really isn't happening right now. So I believe I had suggested that we at least have some sort of formal complaint process for people that may not be following the permit guidelines, and I think Darren's going to work on that a little bit. But I think that's a discussion that we need to continue to have with either planning and zoning and us. At some point, we need to make sure that we're enforcing these. And so I did have several meetings this week. I had a meeting with Kurtz Township officials on a landowner problem in Rusted. I also had a meeting with Alliance Township officials on this problem in Baker, and I also met with the landowner in Rolog on that concern. So I'm hoping we can at least address those problems. And I also had the MetroCog Executive Committee meeting where we discussed budget a little bit and projects going forward. One interesting piece that I noticed, Clay County on their project list for the next 4 or 5 years really doesn't have any projects being addressed. I realize we kind of piggyback with the city of Moorhead there, but I don't know if that's our engineering department not suggesting projects be used or going after Minnesota transportation dollars. I'm not quite sure, but I think we should at least be actively seeking that out.
I think most of what our highway engineer does on the projects, and MetroCog being what they referred to on the STIP, but that, like, you referring to the federal dollars that come down from MetroCog?
Not so much the federal dollars, just in looking at their 4 or 5 year plan, Clay County doesn't have any projects in there.
No, okay. Yeah, well, then we should have that conversation with Dave to see.
I think, excuse me, the one we had was the plan, our 5-year plan, our 10-year plan, wasn't that supposed to be? I don't know if that's still in the making or not. I know we put it off this last year. I don't know.
In the comprehensive plan?
Comprehensive, a good word.
Yeah, I don't think,
That's not on the list anymore, huh?
Right, well, we can
Just a
follow up with that.
but I believe that concludes my reports.
Commissioner Wayman?
Let's see, I went on the bonding tour bus with the state legislators last Tuesday, and we did a presentation for them on the diversion. And they also, on the bus tour, they did some of the projects that Moorhead's looking at, that they're looking at bonding money for. I think that went pretty well for everybody. At a jail and law enforcement center construction meeting yesterday, and I think you can see everything seems to be on schedule there. It's pretty amazing what's going on at the correctional facility. You can see all the walls coming up. Another week or two, it's going to really look like something. So, and I think, did you say, Kevin, 2 to 3 weeks for the parking lot, the northwest parking lot to be completed? So that'll be good when that's done. And
yeah, it's going to run a little bit behind the opening of the school, but I think we've got enough spots to be okay.
Should be pretty close, so that should work out pretty well. Had a detention meeting, and we discussed that at length today. So, and then I had a Clay County Council on Aging meeting, and had a presentation from the mayor of Glendon. They've got some property that they're looking for a developer to put up some senior housing there, and they had a presentation. There's the Senior Connections is having a quarterly series that starts September 13th at the MCOM Center, and they're going to have a lot of topics that are of interest to seniors: avoiding falls, living with Alzheimer's, pain management, that type of a thing. And it starts September 13th at 1 p.m., the first one, and for more information, or you have to make, it's free, but you have to make reservations to attend, and the number is 218-299-5514. So that was it for me.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brooks?
I had pick committee last week where we discussed they're trying to, they got 2 part-time positions. They want to group them into 1 part-time position. That we discussed that at length, and we're going to keep looking at that. We didn't approve anything there, or just we're going to look at it some more. I also had went to Keene Township last night for their meeting, and you know, sometimes when they come back from these townships, they say, well, there are concerns for roads and bridges and stuff like that, but we really got involved in social services and stuff like that, you know. So, I mean, our townships out there, I found out that they're very concerned about what's going on in social services too, you know, because there they have a couple of foster homes, you know. They realize the expense that it costs, you know, bringing kids in here and stuff like that. And it's sort of related when we had this discussion this morning on this juvenile center, you know. I mean, they're all concerned about that, and it's all part of the discussion. Had a very good discussion out there, and they're very concerned about the jail, how it's coming along and stuff like that. So, like I say, sometimes we think, I don't know, probably I do, townships are just involved in roads and stuff like that. But they're very concerned about what's going on here in the county, and I don't know whether we have to do more to let the counties know what's going on. How's the jail project? I know we discussed the jail project almost every, somewhat, but how it's going, probably there's some sort of update we need to give to the townships, whatever, because I'm sure they don't drive in here every week or every month to see what's going on. And also, I'd like to, what Jenny was talking about these permits, when we issue these permits, not being enforced, and that's the one thing I've been hearing about. They want to hire some enforcer for gravel permits. The gravel that we issue, are these companies being enforced, stuff like that. And the more I discussed it with some of the people here, is that we do have something in place. We have the planning department, and we have the sheriff's department to enforce these things, but it's not being done. So I think that's where we're getting them. I think we do need enforcement of some sort. And that's pretty much, I guess, what they were discussing at the planning commission. And I have to agree with that. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Haney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On Tuesday, August 15th, I attended the Adult Mental Health Local Advisory Committee, and we heard reports from the various stakeholders. Mental health consumers are now to be referred to as persons of lived experience rather than mental health consumers. And the Gull Harbor is increasing from 11 to 12 beds and hopes to be able to improve mobility issues in the near future. And then I also attended the beginning of the presentation of the Minnesota House Capital Improvement Committee from the Buffalo Red River Watershed and the Clay County Solid Waste Committee with Kirk and Steve. And then on Thursday, August 17th, I attended the MetroCog Executive Policy Board meeting along with Commissioner Mojo, and same thing as what she's reported already. That was my entire...
Very good, thank you. I had Personal Issues Committee, and I think Commissioner Gross has talked about that enough, so I'm not going to say that anymore. Same as with I also had the jail and LAC construction semi-monthly meeting, and I think as Commissioner Whalen said, that's self-evident to what's going on there. There's no major surprises going on right now. I think there's a slight change in delivery date of when it would be turned over to us, but it's not a significant amount of time, so it's still falling within what we're expecting. And I don't have anything else, so Mr. Berg, if you want to give us yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. First item I have is I received a inquiry from the school district. They have the city council set up for a tour of the new school on August 31st at 8:30 in the morning. That is a Thursday.
Which school?
Dorothy Dodds.
More schools they're looking to have. I'm assuming it's the new one. Is that Dorothy Dodds?
Yes.
There's two new ones, but I assume maybe it's Don's.
Oh, okay. And they were wondering if any of you would like to go on that. And I told them I'd be talking to you guys this morning, so I could give you a...
What's the day again?
It is August 31st at 8:30 in the morning. That is a Thursday.
I'll let you know
Yeah,
if I can a little later today.
I'd like to, but let me check.
Okay. And I told them I'd get back to them today, so if
Okay.
I could, I'd appreciate
I would
that.
like to as well.
Okay. Okay, very good. The TIC meeting's already been discussed, and what the detail was there, it was a long PIC meeting. There was a lot of discussion, a lot of in-depth discussion. And Juvenile Center, I think had meetings with Steve in regards to that, and then I had meetings with Steve and Rhonda in regards to that. I think it's moving forward very well. We had a meeting with the diversion review on the P3. The company send in questions that they have, and we review those questions and have those every Wednesday afternoon. Had a budget meeting with Lori, plus I met with Nancy, plus going over several of the other aspects from other departments, and we're moving along in that, I think, real well. Had a central administrative managers meeting last week and discussed a lot of issues that are going on within central administration. Scott Fedek stopped by, our architect stopped by on Friday, and we just discussed a lot of issues about the project. We feel the project is moving along very well, moving into the construction project that we had yesterday afternoon. I laid a schedule on your desk that outlines the law enforcement center, the 3-week lookout, and then also a revised total project one, and then there were some bullet points on those information sheets that you can take with you and bring you up to date on that. Had a discussion with Otter Tail County, had a conference call. They wanted some information on the process that we went through to convert the auditor, treasurer, and recorder's positions to appointed versus elected, and I see that they're talking about that on the North Dakota side as well now. So I think there's more and more people are realizing that it's an okay process to go through, especially when they don't require any qualifications for that elected position right now. I did lay a schedule on your desk also of the preliminary schedule for bond sale, and we're looking at November 7th for that. And but there's a process that leads up to that, but I just wanted to give you a heads up that that is coming down the pike. You know, when you looked at the preliminary one and then you had the capital improvement public hearing, you were looking at the $16 million. There's been no reason to change that. It may be less, but that's just the guideline we were looking at for the maximum, and that falls in line with what we started with 2 years ago. So it's really, I think, keeping everything on schedule, which is really good. If you look at the back of your agenda today, you'll notice that the second from the bottom, Thursday, September 21st, is, I think a couple weeks ago, you talked about us putting together another meeting with the rural cities, and I visited with Commissioner Mojo a little bit about a date and a location and things, so I reached out to Bruce Albright, and he would make the watershed building available in Barnesville for that meeting, and again, we'd look at 5 to 7 on that Thursday night, September 21st. So
Thank you.
it's kind of, we'll send out letters again. They're set to be sent out this week to the rural cities. And
That's the day of their watershed tour, I think.
Yep.
yes, it is. Yep. Yes, it is. So we thought that might work out pretty good right at the end of it, too. So. Mr. Chair,
Are you going to prepare some sort of an agenda?
Sure.
And it might be good to send that out to, and I think what we should do is maybe write on it or ask for a little update from each of those.
Okay.
So that they, might encourage them to have somebody from all the, cities in our
Yeah.
county to come in and let us know what's going on.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
One concern that I got from one of the cities was public transportation or ride share type thing going on in these cities. So, I don't know, if that's something that can be put on the agenda, discuss, as far as, I don't know, where we have buses going out there,
Yeah.
or for some senior citizens to come into the Fargo-Moorhead area and utilize the services.
Well, maybe we could provide them with what's currently available.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. With that, I think we will be adjourned. Thank you.